this video, we will look at configuring the Netvio JP4 Series AVoIP system. Using the Netvio 360 software for Mac or PC, available from netvio.co.uk. Once all of your hardware is correctly connected as per the Netvio user guide, open the Netvio 360 software on your laptop and press Scan for Devices to discover the Netvio controller. The Netvio software will look for the CTL port of the Netvio CL, and your laptop should be connected to a wired or wireless network that can see that port. Whether or not you have a DHCP server on the network, the Netvio software and your laptop should configure to the same network settings, provided you're set to DHCP on your laptop as well, enabling you to see the unit straight away. Once you have discovered the controller, it will alert you to any new firmware versions that are available, which I recommend installing at this stage, and then press Configure to access the configuration interface of the controller. The first time you connect, you'll be asked for your username and password. The default username is admin, and default password is password, all lowercase. Once you're logged in, you're greeted by an identical screen to our matrix. However, the inputs and outputs are currently not populated, as we have not yet scanned and assigned for endpoints. Simply press Scan and Assign, and the Netvio controller will trawl the network for any available endpoints and place them in the correct columns. On this system, I have 2 encoders and 2 decoders, identified by their MAC address, so I highly recommend taking a note of the MAC addresses of each unit as you install them. And then you will see that they initially loaded with red RJ45 icons, but very quickly they synchronized with the CL. You saw a synchronizing icon, and then the blue RJ45 logo appeared to show that they had finished synchronizing and are now online. The first step of configuration is to name your devices. If you have a note of the MAC addresses, you can simply use those notes, or if you didn't take a note of the encoders, you can view the preview stream from the source to enable you to say which source is which within your system. I know this is my Skybox and this is my FreeSat. You can do the same on the outputs. However, I know this is my Sony TV and this is Hisense. It's possible to view information about the current video format and EDID information that your system is set to. By default, we set to 4K 30, 444, 7.1 audio with HDR. It is recommended that you fine-tune your EDIDs. There is a dedicated EDID video on our YouTube channel. To start to configure endpoints, you can either select individual endpoints and head to the settings, or select all the endpoints if you're going to be making identical settings across different units. Once selected, highlight the settings you wish to use. Firstly, in video settings, if you're having HDCP related issues with a specific source, you can try forcing to HDCP 1 or version 2. However, I've found normally automatic is the best setting here. The encoder content bias can be changed. This is particularly important if you're using PC sources, which would require graphics mode. There is slightly better picture quality by using the picture quality bias, or if the source is used for viewing a lot of fast-paced content such as sport, you can use the frame rate bias. And you may like to try the unlabeled encoder options as well. Here I'll be using pitch quality bias. In the system, we have high quality 1080p RTSP preview streams. These can be enabled here. Selecting an individual unit will show you the current IP address of the preview stream. You can choose to utilize H.264 or H.265 encoding. Select your resolution, the default and optimum being 1080, and up to 30 frames per second. A constant or variable bitrate, and depending on your use case, select a bitrate that is suitable. I would recommend 1000 or 2000 bits for streaming over the internet, and anything from 4000 to 8000 for local network playback. Press apply to apply your settings, and your units will show that they are syncing and have updated to apply those new settings. If at any time you see an exclamation mark next to a setting, it means that the settings have not currently been applied to the units. Simply press the apply button to update them. In audio settings, you can choose whether or not the HDMI audio is used from the source or whether the analog connection is used. And you can tune the analog output volume of the encoder in order to attenuate the volume if the sources are particularly loud compared to other sources in the system. We have IR, serial and CEC generators to test sending commands to source devices or connected devices from the encoders. We can set static IP addresses for the encoder preview streams. We can also tag a specific VLAN to the preview stream to enable it to exist in a separate VLAN from the AV over IP streams. When initially discovering your devices, you can use the identify option to start to identify your encoders and later your decoders by making the lights flash on the front of the unit, either indefinitely or for a 2-minute period, and it can be manually stopped as well. EDIDs are set in the EDID settings here. We have a large number of predefined EDIDs. It is also possible to copy out the EDID currently in the unit. It is also possible to import bin files of EDIDs that you have previously exported. The commands button is disabled at this time, as this is only for display control and displays are not connected to the encoders. And in the management tab, we can reboot, reset, unassign and remove endpoints from the controller. On the display settings, the video options include the video scaling options, both HDCP version and fast match, auto match, and manual scalers to set the resolution lower. I highly recommend for modern 4K panels to utilize the pass-through option, and for older screens to set to HDCP version 1 and set the scaler to 1920 by 1080. 60 Hz if you're in the US, 50 Hz for Europe. At the bottom here we have video loss settings. This enables us to send a proxy command, a power on and off command, if the display is not receiving a signal from a source after a set period of time. So here I've set to power off after 30 seconds of not receiving a signal. And we can also set the power on command to be sent to the display when a signal is re-established to the device. We can also disable here the idle screen status information so that we do not have any white writing on the display when the screen is off. However, I only recommend doing this after finishing commissioning, as it is useful to be able to see on the display which device is currently shared and the feedback of the status of the RX in the bottom left hand corner. The audio settings on the RX just have volume control. We also have IR, RS232 and HDMI CEC test areas. If you are using display control with serial commands, it is important to set your baud rate in this screen, more commonly 9600, and apply that, as this is where the baud rate is set for any display control commands. There is no network settings on the RXs. They are always set to auto IP to enable the CL to always discover them. But here you can also identify the unit by flashing the lights on the system. In order to capture an EDID, you must only have one RX selected at a time. You must also ensure that the display is connected to the RX and in the on state before trying to capture the EDID. It will fail if the display is off, as it is not able to capture the EDID from the display. Press capture and you can then export the EDID for use at a later time. For proxy commands or display control commands, these are used within the Netvio app. I would highly recommend seeing the separate video on this. These commands by default utilize CEC to control the display and can be edited to IR or serial here. Finally, in the Management tab, we have the reboot, reset options, and also on assigning and removing the endpoint from the CL. In the main window, we can see all of our feedback information, including current settings, content bias, EDID, and the preview stream URL. And we have our target pickers for video enabled at present. In the top right hand corner, we have the infrared, audio, serial, and USB signal path routing. Unlike the matrix that require certain audio settings to enable free routing, the AV over IP system does not require this, and we can begin to free route audio and video without changing additional audio settings. However, in most installations where you are looking at routing audio and video together, simply use the master switch pickers to route audio and video at the same time. You will also note that infrared, serial, and USB are free routable, and those commands are available in the Netvio API. Here you will see the expand inputs and expand outputs options. There is another video available about the functions of these screens. Quickly replace units that may need to be swapped out. Across the top, we have the controller options for setting the IP address of the controller setting the alias name, which shows up when you first discover the unit, setting the primary network interface between the AV LAN and control LAN interface. If you are having trouble accessing devices, this setting is worth changing to ensure the lowest metric interface is used. You can also see the IP address of the AV LAN interface, although this is not changeable. In the controller management screen, we have the reboot, reset network settings, and reset to factory default options, as well as the option to update firmware if you did not do so earlier. The Auth and API Settings page allows you to change the administrative password for the unit, as well as disabling HTTPS should you wish to, disabling the plaintext API for the maximum level of security, and uploading custom SSL and TLS certificates and keys. You'll also see the video wall function if you are running the latest version of software. Please see the separate video on this. At this stage, you should be fully ready to implement your control system's drivers, which are available from netvio.co.uk, or commission your Netvio Go app project by pressing the Create App Project button. Please see the separate videos on those on our YouTube channel.